Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on Superman and Lois. And I guess this is mainly season 2, but this is like a sprinkling of season 3. Like season 3 can be the mustard on the side or something. So we are done with the second season of Superman and Lois, and the finale, while good initially, I wasn't too sure about it. And I did go and rewatch it because I was confused the first time as to whether it was good or it was better than it actually was. And on that first viewing, and I was like, I'm sure it's better than I think it actually is because I was just warped. And I went back and watched it, and it was, I think, a finale where if you weren't enjoying the elements in season 2 of Superman and Lois, you probably didn't enjoy the finale. But if you were enjoying them, then you liked it a lot. And I liked it much better the second time around. And I would say if you didn't enjoy it as much the first time around, go rewatch it, because that's what I did, and the experience did improve. But whatever happened in the finale was completely, and that is not an overstated reaction or overreaction as a whole, but it was just completely drowned out by what was it, 30 or so second scene in which General Lane, of all people, revealed that Superman and Lois is not set in the Arrowverse, not on Earth Prime, despite the connections and references in season 1, with this being exactly what General Lane told Jordan and Jonathan. I've been working for the DoD for a long time. I've seen things you would not believe, glimpses of other worlds, and the leagues of superheroes they have on them. And even though we only have your father on this planet, thank God that we do, because he's the finest of any Earth. So not only do they completely separate themselves from the Arrowverse in that statement, they also try and say Superman, our Superman's the best in the entire multiverse, I guess. Anyway. Of course, the people that aren't fans of the Arrowverse but were fans of Superman and Lois were happy, or at least in favor, but most were confused and just not overly happy with the decision and how it was revealed. Now, of course, many would be wanting Todd Helbing, who's the showrunner of Superman and Lois, they would want his explanations on certain decisions, let's speak English, which we will go over in this video, as it was discussed, at least for this video, in a TV Line interview. I'm sure there's other interviews where he goes over it as well, but we're using TV Line for this particular video. And he also went over other reveals from the finale that will lead into season 3. So strap yourselves in, grab the popcorn, grab the stress ball if that's what you need, because the explanation doesn't really sit well with me. Not because it happened, but because of the delay in going about it, just how they went about it, and also leading people on for pretty much 2 seasons now. I don't think this explanation is going to make anyone really change their tune on how they feel about this. But of course, throughout the video, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions on all this. Very curious to see how you feel about the decision, especially based after what you'll hear Todd Helbing explain, and also just your opinions on stuff moving forward into season 3 from a couple different things from the end of season 2. And of course, if you want to show support for the channel and all that, why not drop a like on the video to do all that? So we're just going to go through all this and the way it's prepared by TV Line, so let's do it. Chrissy was one of the last people I expected to learn Clark's secret. What brought about that? Lois has had to withhold a lot of information from Chrissy. We really put her in an interesting / complicated scenario at work with her partner. We wanted to get Clark working at the Smallville Gazette this season, but once all the Bizarro stuff started happening, that became harder to do so. So we're going to try to do that next season, and it felt like they couldn't really work together in earnest and have a good working relationship if Clark was doing what he did at the Daily Planet all the time. Leaving to go save the world would be really, really hard. And I don't know if there was really an over intention to have Clark working there this season. I don't really know how that would have worked, unless there was meant to be another subplot that was completely taken out. But I think the main reason you'd want Clark working there next season is not only to give him something to do, and maybe have some more Clark and Lois scenes that aren't revolved around, just all this dramatic stuff going on, but also because what was set up for next season, you probably want some undercover stuff going on, and journalism might be one of the main focuses for season 3, just based off what they've set up, or at least investigative journalism. So maybe that's why they'd want Clark really working in a journalistic environment. 3 whole employees next season. The Smallville Gazette is blowing up. It is blowing up. We've joked since day one that we should have just have a bunch of people who never say anything in the background, which isn't that what they did on the Bizarro world? I guess it was meant to be the opposite. So there was no one ever in there, and on the Bizarro world, there was everyone in there. So I guess that makes sense. Are there debates in the writer's room over which characters should find out when? I don't know if I'd call them debates. The secret identity thing is such a trope, and part of us wants to never have to deal with it. You want to do some of it, like the Lana stuff, her being his best friend. That felt interesting, but the overall feeling was to just do it this season, get it out of the way, and move forward. The secret identity is always going to be a big topic and always going to be a bit of an issue. I mean, look at the Flash. Like, sometimes you understand and you sort of agree why Barry would reveal his identity to someone, and then there's other points where you go, there's no need for that. Like, you can just go around and be the Flash. You don't have to reveal your identity. So it's a bit of a toss up, and some people will agree with certain decisions around it. Some will disagree. It's probably going to be a hard one to always make people agree on it. I don't know if people will necessarily agree on the Chrissy one. I understand his explanation that he said before about, how he goes about just leaving all the time. But would Chrissy ever suspect it? I don't know. Intergang has been referenced a few times in the Arrowverse, including on this show. Why jump into it now, and how deep will we go? We knew we wanted to have our version of Intergang in this show, and we originally thought it could happen sooner than season 3, but we had some cool preliminary thoughts which we're going to start diving into in a couple of weeks. Like all of the villains in the Superman mythos, we want to keep doing what we've been doing, which is to take a classic villain and reinvent them as best as we can to make them compelling and grounded and tie them into Superman and Lois. So I think I said this in my review, which is, that Supergirls used a lot of Superman villains, throughout their 6-year run before they ended. So that sort of can weaken the pool, and that maybe have been like a big decision as to why they separated themselves as they could, even though Superman and Lois reinvents them anyway. So you could have just used Crisis as a reason as to why a villain is maybe didn't exist before and now exists now, and make them a bit different. So they're going to keep doing that with Intergang. It's going to be very interesting to see how they do that. Intergang is like some alien weaponry. It's actually interesting they're doing Intergang because Black Adam appears to have Intergang in their movie. So gonna have Intergang as like a threat not too far apart from each other in like DC live action. But then again, it might not be Intergang that's changed up too much. It might be someone like Bruno Mannheim, which was referenced in the Diggle scene, which we'll get to eventually. So yeah, I'm curious to see how they reinvent them. They hardly ever called Ali Parasite. They referenced like a Parasite feature maybe like 2 or 3 times. So maybe with Intergang, maybe it's not alien technology. Maybe it's just from the future. Maybe there's a time machine. I don't know. It could be something like that. I love seeing Jordan have so much control over his powers. Feels like it might be time for a name, maybe even a suit. Eventually, yes, I think you'll get the Superboy name. I don't know how soon that's going to be, but I think Alex Garfin is looking forward to cutting his hair, something a little more like his haircut in the comics. But what we really find interesting about Jordan is that it's such a different time and age than when Clark was saving people as a teenager. We're in such a different era, with cell phones, everybody taking pictures. That's the complicated stuff we want to get into. So we saw an example of that earlier this season when Jordan blew the ice, made the ground all icy for those people that slipped over. There's a security camera, like a CCTV camera right there. That's a big issue, which I can understand, which makes you wonder, will he wear like a mask? Will he have like a bit of like a mask thing going, or not too sure how they'd go about trying to protect that unless he does all of his stuff outside of Smallville. I don't know how you'd go about that necessarily, but I think people want the Superboy thing to be brought in. People love the comic stuff, and especially a suit for him, even if it's like a really like proto suit. I think still people would like it. I mean, people enjoyed the Jonathan L suit, so you obviously don't want to copy that, but maybe something in that style, if you want to call it. I also appreciated Clark telling Jonathan about the Kryptonian technology in the new fortress. Any chance he'll get to join the fight in a more concrete way? In episode 3 of season 1, there's the beat where Clark shows up at Jonathan's practice. Originally, he was holding a jacket. The implication was that he was going to take him to the fortress, but it didn't play that way. It's like what they say on the boat. This is a family thing. The fortress should be for the family, so Jonathan's going to be brought into the fold in that respect. We'll see if he gets his own suit, if he follows Nat's lead, and how it all unfolds. We'll definitely want to bring Jonathan into that superhero life more than he has been. Now, the big issue is that, power-wise, so you're going to have to see if that develops in any way, shape, or form. Jonathan has been someone that people have criticized the writing for in season 2, along with Lois. I'm saying that Jordan and Superman, the power side of things got more focus. It's always going to be a really tough thing to balance because it's different than say The Flash, for example, if you want to use another show on the CW, or even Stargirl, where you really Stargirl's really got one main character, which is Stargirl. On The Flash, you've got The Flash, and you got supporting characters around that. With Superman and Lois, it's Superman, Lois, and you'd argue also Jordan and Jonathan. It's that core family, which are all pretty much the main characters. Superman's obviously going to always be a bit above that, but Jordan, Jonathan, and Lois don't fall as low as other supporting characters on other shows. So it's always going to be difficult to manage that, and there's always going to be criticisms around that. And I think it's just you got to pick your seasons as to who's the focus in certain ways, or maybe like for the first half of a season, there's a lot of Jordan and Superman, or Jordan and Lois, and then for the other half, there's a lot of Jonathan and Superman, or whatever it might be. So that's a tough thing they got to balance, but it's always going to be an issue when you got a lot of characters. I'm very curious about Tal. Between Lana telling Carl she still needs time, then Tal investigating his marriage to Lana Rowe, I feel like something might happen there. I will say that Tal's going to be disappointed when he finds out the scenario with his doppelganger's wife. I can't say this enough. Adam Rayner is an amazing guy, an amazing actor, and we don't want to lose him. As much as we can bring him back, we're going to try to do. We haven't figured out exactly how he's going to return, but I would bet that he does. So the handy thing with Tal Rowe is that his other version on the Bizarro world is dead, so he can just live that Tal Rowe's life. It's obviously going to be much better than, I guess, trying to be Morgan Edge, who's seen as a bit of a bad dude over on this Earth, on whatever the normal Earth number is. It's not Earth Prime, it's random Earth number. So he might just be like a handful of episodes a season type of guy that they might bring in. Depends when they really need him. You don't, like for Intergang at first, they really want enough drama to build up before they bring him in, so we might not see him that much in season 3, maybe like 2 or 3 episodes, but there's a while until that starts to play out, so I have to wait and see. But here we go. This is where Todd Helbing explains the disconnection from the Arrowverse. Let's jump into it. From day one, there were questions of how we were connected to the Arrowverse. If you go back to the first script that got sent to Warner Brothers and DC, it had a lot of reference to other heroes like The Flash. They mentioned Crisis multiple times as well. This is me cutting in. But they mentioned Crisis a lot of time. They mentioned Kara. They mentioned, as I said, The Flash. They mentioned, I think, Green Arrow, Oliver Queen. They mentioned a lot of stuff. You'd probably be able to find that original pilot online, just type in like Superman and Lois pilot script or something. And it's in like the opening bit, so you don't have to read too long. There's a lot there, and it got cut out, which concerned people early on. There were moments when we were shooting, and I think I've said this before, but there was a photo of Kara on Lois's desk at the Daily Planet. All of that stuff got slowly pulled out, and the more we did that, the more it became a can of worms to even mention it. So why didn't we get this big speech sooner? And this is where it gets a bit drama alert nation. DC and I had a conversation during season 1, and the decision to keep Superman and Lois separate was made then, but I couldn't make it public until the end of this season. So when I got all these questions in previous interviews, I knew what we were doing, but I could never talk about it. It got a little frustrating on my end, but I totally understood DC's position. So this put that to rest. I've said from the beginning that we want to put our own stamp on the Superman property. This wasn't meant to alienate us from the Arrowverse, but because a lot of the other shows are sadly no longer going to be on the air, it felt like the right thing to do. While this Superman is aware of the multiverse as established in episode 7 of season 1, we have to think about this as a separate Superman, a doppelganger of the one who was in the Arrowverse. I understand why everyone has been wanting the references, but it would have felt wrong. So what are my thoughts on this? Well, I guess the big question is like, so DC is to blame? And I guess you could argue that. However, you could have done this in a much better way, and leading people on and arguably piggybacking off the Arrowverse for interest in regards to potential crossovers and stuff was, well, it comes off very bad, and the show didn't need to piggyback. It's Superman. But if you say they didn't, you'd be lying, because they did. They used it in promotional material and stuff like that. Todd Helbing definitely isn't to blame if we are to believe that DC requested to keep it separate, but man, the handling of it was not good at all. I'd say it's bad. Like both in interviews as well as the actual execution of the explanation of the scene in the episode that we saw in the season 2 finale. It was actually bad writing for that scene. It was actually probably one of the scenes where you go, what? Like that sounds like it was written by like a 10-year-old. Like it was really bad writing for that one scene. Obviously, how this impacts the show going forward will be very interesting. I'm not going to stop watching it, but some might. I've seen people saying that. That could be an empty threat. You get a lot of empty threats on the internet. They could be back there for season 3, episode 1, as excited as anyone else. The person that loved the fact it's not in the Arrowverse anymore. Who knows? But maybe it does lose some people. But regardless, it will always leave a weird mark on the show. Like not when watching every episode. It's not you're going to, load up season 3, episode 5. Oh, remember when that terrible scene with they said it's not in the Arrowverse? That's not going to sit there every episode, as that would just be weird. I mean, if you are one of those people, that'd be a bit awkward, a bit weird. But just the show as a whole, it will leave a bit of a mark on it. And also, I do have a bit of a question mark about him saying DC and I had a conversation during season 1. When during season 1? During episode 1 of season 1? During episode 5? Or towards the end? Because the big issue that a lot of people have is the Diggle scene from towards the end of season 1. Like, was like episode, it was in like the final, it was definitely in the back half, and that's where a lot of people have an issue with, because in that scene where Diggle shows up, he mentions Oliver, he mentions Crisis, he alludes to other heroes on this earth. What? And he also mentions, I think, the green box that he has, that storyline that was going on there. So obviously this wasn't talked about before that, or before that episode aired at the very least, or even maybe even after, because you just potentially cut that. It really makes you question when this decision was made and whether it was even a concrete decision back then. It seems like it was really poorly handled, and that's what I mean, like in regards to like leaving a bad taste in people's mouths in regards to it, and also showing a bit of like disrespect to the other shows, because even though the other shows end, that doesn't mean you can't keep going in that world. Like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, just because something ends doesn't mean you can keep going. Like, I don't know, it feels a bit weird. But let's move on to the Diggle stuff, because I'm sure like we'll be here for half an hour in regards to just questioning the decision and even the explanation around it. But let's move on to the Diggle stuff. As for the John Diggle we saw at the end of the season 2 finale, he's also, you guessed it, not the same Diggle that spent 8 seasons kicking butt on Arrow. This is also a new Diggle. David Ramsey had grown a beard and grew his hair out. He called me and said, "I've been growing my hair, I look different. Do you want me to shave and get a haircut?" So not to add more confusion to it, but he's a different Diggle. And I'll be like, okay, but here's the issue. And a lot of people would have picked up on this before the episode aired. His hair, his beard, and just overall his look is the exact same one he had on The Flash 2 weeks earlier. And originally this finale would have aired only a week after that Flash episode. So because of the delay, we like, I guess, making people try and forget that he looked exactly the same on The Flash. Like, looking at that Diggle scene in the Superman and Lois season 2 finale, you would just assume he went straight to Smallville after his visit to Liane Yu, because he looks exactly the same. Like, man, that's anyway. We know it poorly executed, poorly planned, and I think if you could give Todd Helbing a time machine, he'd go back to season 1, never have that Diggle scene in that episode, because clearly I don't think that the discussions happened during season 1. I think it happened during season 2, early on, when they probably got the word from the CW that they weren't continuing on with Batwoman and Legends, because I think that just seems pretty clear. And also the fact that Batwoman and Legends were meant to have a crossover in season 1, which was cancelled due to the pandemic. So there was never intentions out of the gate. I think the discussions and changes happened early into season 2, or maybe like halfway through season 2. And that's why we got this scene so late in the season, in the finale, done really quickly and poorly written. And I wish they'd done it better. If they wanted to do this, that's fine. That's fine. It's your show. You get the freedom to do what you want. And I think it opens up the door for creative freedom, because they aren't held back by some of the stuff that Supergirl did during their 6 seasons run. But do it better. Like, everyone, applauds Superman and Lois, including myself, on its writing. But one of the biggest things that you had ever had to do for this show was one of the worst pieces of writing that the show's ever done, if will ever do. So that's the biggest issue with how this was handled. And hopefully we can move on. I don't think people will for a while. And it will be interesting to see the thoughts and discussion around the show moving forward, because it doesn't stop the Flash from using Superman. But if the Flash ever does use Superman, it's going to have to be the older version that, from like 3 years ago or something like that. And it won't feel the same. It'll feel awkward. So, and will the Flash ever reference Superman now? Who knows? They might be barred from doing that now. I'm not too sure. But man, this whole situation definitely is controversial, to say the least. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Sorry for ending on a bit of a downer, but it was always going to be a downer when discussing this, regardless of how you feel about it. But yeah, let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions about this. Do you think they regardless of whether you think they did the right thing, do you think they handled it well? Because I don't know how anyone could sit there and say they handled it well with a straight face, because I think, regardless of how you feel about the decision, it wasn't handled the best. But yeah, let me know your reactions and all your thoughts down in the comments, especially in regards to all the other stuff that we went over as well. And if you enjoyed the video and want to show your support, why not drop a like on it? And if you're new to the channel, why not subscribe as well? And I'll catch you on the next one, whenever that is. Goodbye.